Talking with Michael Greve, the AEI legal scholar, John G. Searle Scholar for Legal Studies. Michael, when we were talking with Tom, we discussed the nature of the challenge to the individual mandate. But even if the court finds the mandate is unconstitutional, they then have to reach another question, which is how much of the healthcare reform bill, Obamacare, is going to be thrown out along with the mandate. That's called the severability issue. Could you explain the severability issue for our listeners?
Sure. There are basically three positions that are being advanced in this litigation. The plaintiff's position is that the mandate is, so to speak, the first domino in a whole row of dominoes. So if the mandate goes, then the coverage the coverage provisions in the Act go with it, the subsidies go with it. That in turn hangs together with the Medicare and Medicaid provisions, so that at the end of the day, you're just left with the ornaments on this Christmas tree that all of a sudden has fallen if the mandate falls.
So the
That's
plaintiffs
the
are
plaintiff's
asking for
position.
virtually the entire act to be thrown out along with the mandate.
Yes, for literally the entire act. The government takes a very different provision. It says that if the mandate is unconstitutional, which of course they say it isn't, then the coverage mandates that are directly tied to the mandate itself go by the boards as well, but that's it. Nobody was arguing, none of the parties were arguing that the mandate can stand or fall entirely on its own, and so the Supreme Court appointed a special counsel to argue that position. And so that's the special counsel's position is that you can yank out the mandate, you can yank the mandate out of the statute and leave the rest of it intact. And so those are the basic three positions. There are in amicus briefs intermediate positions that sort of try to stop the dominoes from falling at some point.
You find one of those arguments particularly persuasive that says that you don't have to throw out the whole act, but neither should the mandate be the only thing that's thrown out. Could you explain the position that you find persuasive and what that entails?
Sure. I'd say most plausible rather than persuasive, because the questions are really, really difficult. And I should say this sounds now like special pleading, because this position that I'm going to outline now is being advanced by the Competitive Enterprise Institute and our colleague here, Tom Miller, and it was written by a friend of mine, Tom Christina. What it says is that, look, the way Congress looked at the healthcare problem was in terms of different populations. So there's the Medicaid population, that's the poor, and there's a whole title in the Act for that. And there's the Medicare population, that is to say those who are old enough to be in Medicare, and that's a separate population. And then there's the sort of broad population of people who are employed or could be employed, and that's where the mandate comes in. That's technically speaking in Title I of the Act. And so
private insurance market,
the private insurance
adults
markets
between the ages of 18 and 65.
Right, so long as they're not poor. Right. And that's where the mandate kicks in, and all the provisions in Title I are closely tied to the mandate, and you can take down, or so to speak, excise that title without doing a whole lot of without doing any mentionable damage to the rest of the statute at all. So the Medicaid parts would stay, the Medicare parts would stay, and the population we talked about, that is the non-poor, non-elderly, employed or potentially employed, that would in real life go back to Congress, and Congress would take another bite at it.
That means not only would the mandate go, but that means that the requirement that states set up insurance exchanges for people to buy private insurance would go. That means the government subsidies that some people think would run into the hundreds of billions of dollars a year to private individuals to buy these policies, that would go. And it also means that the regulations that the government is putting on what types of health insurance you can buy and what types of health care you can receive, those would go by the wayside too.
Yes, they would, at least as a matter of law. One has to remember that some of the mandates, though not the big ones, the community rating and guaranteed issue as they're called in the trade, that some of the mandates, so for example, the fact that you can cover kids on the parents' insurance until age 26, those are already in effect, and insurers have made those adjustments. Whether they would unravel those if Title I went by the boards, I really don't know. I suppose it depends on the carrier and the mandate and the state and so forth.
Oh my, competition in health insurance, what a terrible thing.
It could happen.